Boom! It is Monday. This is Why Libertarian. I am Matt. Another wonderful week. As usual, like, comment, subscribe, share, retweet, notification bell, hit all the good things. If you are watching on Vim or Odyssey, please go ahead, follow, and definitely upvote. Upvote helps. I do not monetize on any of the traditional social media feeds. So the only, kind of money or value that I get out of doing this program is on the blockchain. So if you are watching me on the blockchain, please hit that upvote button and help me out in that regard. And to that note, if you would like to find me wherever I am streaming, if you are on traditional social media right now watching, I would implore you to at least check out Hive and or Odyssey to see what those platforms look like so that you can watch me and upvote me on the blockchain in the future. And you can get there by checking out my link tree that is on the scroll below. And let's see, in 2 weeks, May 31st, I will be giving away 100 Hive Live on the May 31st program. There are instructions on how to get involved in that giveaway. It is a free process. You just have to start an account on Hive and put a post in the Liberty community on Hive. You can get there by, there's a video that I've done in the Decentralize Everything playlist on YouTube that walks you through that process. Typically, I have the pin post on my Twitter. Is that right now the pin post is this livecast, but in short order after this livecast is over, I will restore the pin post on my Twitter, and you will be able to see a thread that has step-by-step instructions to get involved in that. Something to note, the first couple of people that have entered in this, again, a free giveaway, first couple of people that have entered, before we even find out who wins the giveaway, they've made multiple dollars off of that Introduce Me post. I'm going to say that again. They made a post on social media and have already made money, crypto, in the form of Hive, off of those posts in order to get into the actual drawing itself. So remember, this is a different world. If you're used to Web 2.0, you got some shit to learn, because it is a different world, let me tell you. So with that, we have a fantastic week set up. I have a fantastic week. Tonight, I am talking anarchy versus slavery. We're going to get some, I almost said metaphysical. I don't know if we're going to get metaphysical just yet. We are going to get very almost spiritual, kind of down to the essence of shit, or at least trying to get down to the essence of some stuff today. On Tuesday, I have an awesome dude by the name of Jeremiah Harding who's coming on, who wrote a blog article on the Agorist Nexus called Be the Gray Man. or I think it's called Why You Want to Be the Gray Man, or You Need to Be the Gray Man. We're going to talk about what the gray man is, right? It is a very interesting concept. It is right in the heart of agorism, and so we're going to be talking about that. Wednesday, I have Tommy Salmons from Year Zero on, from the Libertarian Institute. We are going to be talking, this is like a continuing conversation, like we're not at the end of this conversation. Nothing has been solved or finished or anything like that, and this might continue to go on, but we're going to talk politics, culture, anarchy, agorism, just how do you get to liberty and freedom, right? I'm going to talk kind of like theoretical or from a standpoint of kind of, philosophy this evening, and I will continue to do that, and you'll see why. But we're also going to talk practical shit, right? And then Thursday, I have Matt Passio on. Matt was actually previously on an episode of Shane Hazel's Radical podcast. We're going to be talking about something completely different than he was talking with Shane. They were talking, political organization and stuff like that. Thursday, we're going to be talking about decentralizing stuff, all right? Matt was actually early to the Hive blockchain because he had listened to Shane. I picked up on it. I, had to Twitter around with it a little bit and fiddle it around before I could actually get things done. Matt was like there. He was in it. He was involved. And Matt has some tips and tricks. I mean, when I put my first post up, he was really helpful in terms of getting me up to speed in terms of the information and the learning curve to get me up and running on that platform. So Matt's going to join in Thursday. That's going to be a fun episode. All right, so what are we talking about tonight? We're talking philosophically. I posted earlier today something that on Twitter that got some interesting responses. The nature of the post was there is anarchy and there is slavery, and that's it, right? That is, and again, I am someone who rails against binary thinking. I think there is nuance. I think there is context. I think there is like specificity and stuff like that. But I got to tell you, the things that I am kind of like delving into right now are extremely. They're powerful. They're causing me to question a lot. And one of these just kind of like almost absolutes or at least kind of like foundational concepts are there is liberty and then there is everything else. And that everything else is essentially a gradient of slavery. That's all it is. It's a little slavery, medium strength slavery, or like full on ridiculous crazy shit slavery, right? And the only juxtaposition to that gradient of slavery is true liberty and freedom. And so it got some very kind of, obviously, as you could imagine, some mixed comments that came with it, some votes of confidence, and then a lot of people saying like, you're wrong, or this is ridiculous, or again, something that I probably normally would agree with, this is too binary. It doesn't think about the nuance of existence and life and things like that. So why am I doing an episode on it? Well, I have one other tidbit here to put into the mix here, which is going to, you might think it's going to complicate the conversation, but I promise you it will fold into this conversation, because this conversation we're going to talk about, again, philosophical, very kind of like foundational, like the very essence of things, not the top layer. Most people live on the top layer, like the vast majority of people. For multitude of reasons, right? Whether they are lazy and they just don't want to do it, whether they are afraid of what they might find if they dig too far. Most people live on the top layer. We are going to dig down. And so this item might not at the present seem like it is something that fits into it, but I promise you, it is going to be, it's at least a piece of the puzzle, so to speak. All right. So what I am referring to is my father at the end of last week sent me a notification about a memorial that was going on. And so anyone who has not seen me present, in the past, do any of these videos or these episodes, I come from a law enforcement family. My father and my grandfather, my father's father, were both, police officers, or at least one was I believe a sheriff, and my father was a police officer. So coming from that world, you could imagine that, living in the world of libertarianism, and specifically anarchism is typically at odds with that, right? Because of a lot of the feelings and a lot of the in many cases rightful criticism of law enforcement and how they essentially can use the justification of their job duties to essentially violate someone's constitutional rights because a law was passed and they were told to enforce it. Okay, so my father sent me this, and again, this is going to fold in, but you have to bear with me here. All right, so this is a memorial that was held. Was this held in the past? I forget if this was held in the past or if this was coming up. I think it was last week. But so this is a memorial that's essentially, honoring fallen officers, and it's done by the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. All right, and I understand why my father sent me this. Okay, because first of all, I know that a lot of people that watch me, your initial impression here is going to be one of ACAB or all law enforcement officers are bad if they're violating constitutional rights, and even the ones who aren't, that don't speak up, they're bad too. I know that there's that response. I know that there's also a mix of people in the middle that are like, well, it depends on the situation and stuff like that. I'm not going to have that conversation right now, okay? The one conversation I am going to have cuts to the essence of why is this so controversial, right? Like, why is this a problem? And I would tell you that this is a symptom of the overall kind of overarching problems that we face as not just as a society, as fucking humanity, right? Like, this is global, the problems that we're facing in the present day and age. And my father gave this to me because he knows that I love him and that I am connected with him, and to humanize him and to humanize what he hopes is other people that are law enforcement officers, and in specifically in his mind, do these kind of brave, selfless acts, right? To commit themselves to protect people, or at the very least to protect society, I would say, in some cases, right? And protect community, all right? And so I know what the intent was, and I'm not going to go full on F you, Dad, like cops suck, like I'm not going to do that, okay? What I'm also not going to do is I'm not going to go full on like, well, like weepy, tearful, like my dad was a cop, I would hate if he was killed in the line of duty. Like, obviously I would hate if he was killed in the line of duty, okay? I'm not going to do that either. This is going to be a talk about kind of the underlying issues and why this image or this issue or something like this is so controversial in the present day and age. And it goes so much deeper than just police officers not defying orders that violate someone's constitutional rights, okay? It also goes so much further than what I would say is something that I try and do, right? And it's that I don't try and trample on anyone's grave, okay? There are jokes to be had and things like that about certain deaths and events in history and stuff, and you have to be able to have a wide range of emotion and viewpoints and things like that. What I will not do is celebrate someone dying, okay? I won't do that. So I can recognize the fact that if an individual police officer is doing something that I would deem unconstitutional and aggression against someone, they fight back and the officer loses their life. I'm not going to sit here and cheer, okay? I'm not going to sit here and laugh or degrade their family or the individual. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to appreciate what just happened. I'm going to try and rationalize why it happened and what the problem or what the remedy is, and I'm going to try and do it dispassionately. I'm going to do the same thing here. The other problem is we live in a world where when presented with this, there are people that would say, back the blue, respect the police officers, they keep us safe and things like that. And then there's another group of people that would say, fuck all the cops and they trample on rights and stuff like that. Again, I'm not having this conversation. The reason why we live in that polar opposite world in terms of the viewpoints is because typically the really extreme views get more travel, right? Like the extreme messaging gets more travel. All right. A perfect example is just pretty much anything that has to do with any of these polarized interactions with law enforcement that has happened over the last 15 months. You had people who I legitimately feel had their constitutional rights, and in many cases their lives taken from them by police officers. And then there were also instances where police officers acted as I would expect an average human, an average sovereign free individual to act in a circumstance. I forget the woman's name, but it was essentially the girl who was running after the other girl in the driveway and attempting to stab her, okay? And the police officer shot her. In that context, the individual police officer behaved the way that I would expect myself to behave or someone else to behave, because there was no context other than that someone else was being attacked, okay? But the reason why we live in the world that we live in terms of the extreme viewpoints or the extreme narrative that gets associated with these things is because that's the message that travels. Like, someone who tries to be level-headed in the moment of extremism does not get their voice heard. They just get lost in the din, all right? So we're not going to talk about that, okay? We're not going to talk about whether or not you should kind of have this blanket, conclusion about law enforcement and stuff like that. I want to talk about, like, why is this an issue? I want to talk about why is this such a controversial thing, right? Like, how did we get here? It's not just as black and white as, all of them are bad or all of them are good. It's not that at all. So, someone I've been listening a lot to the last 3 days, actually, let me back up. Before I talk about who I've been listening to, let me kind of give you a little bit more of my background. And this is going to delve into the realm of religion, right? Or spirituality, whatever you want to call it, okay? 3 days ago, I would have called myself an atheist. And today, I'm not sure I would use that. I'm not sure I want to use it, all right? If you had asked me 20 years ago what I identified as, I probably would have told you I was, more spiritual, right? Like when I was entering college, I would have told you I was looking for more spirituality. I was looking for more like commonality that bound everyone together. If you asked me 30 years ago when I was 9 years old, I would have told you I'm a born-again Christian. I'm a Baptist. I've been saved. I've been baptized. Okay. The arc of my religious and my spirituality is my religion and my spirituality is very broad throughout my lifetime. And I can tell you within the last 3 days, I'm just beginning to immerse myself in it, I have found something that has made more sense to me than at any point in time in my entire life. And I can tell you it is also something that makes so much sense in the context of all of the shit that we are dealing with as humanity right in the present day and age. It goes right to the heart of liberty. It goes right to the heart of the authoritarian shit that we're dealing with from our governments. It goes right to the heart of that. And that's why something like a memorial for police officers folds into this. It is a piece of it, right? Like all of these things that people fight over every single day, all of these sacred cows that they do or don't want to slaughter have nothing to do with the actual problem. They are all just either symptoms or symbols of things that they want to believe in, that they are defending with their ideological lives, all right? And so that arc that I've been through in my life, I have, especially in my adulthood, I have felt like organized religion is not my thing, right? Like organized religion, I don't see God in it. I don't see the idea that one religion is correct and all the rest of them are wrong, right? Like, I mean, as a born-again Christian, you're taught that, like, essentially people who are not saved are going to hell. I never believed that for a second. Okay, there might have been a moment when I was a little kid, but how could that possibly be? There are literally billions of people who are not born-again Christians. How pretentious is that? That a handful of people just so happen to luck in to being born into the correct religion or to find the correct religion, and then everyone else is going to burn in eternal damnation. Like someone who was born in Bangladesh who has never met anyone who is a Christian, okay? How did they get born and then die and burn in a fire for the rest of eternity? And because they just weren't lucky enough to, meet a someone who is going over there to proselytize to them. That never made sense to me. But what did make sense was that there had to be something in common, right? I looked for it in science specifically, and I think this is echoed in science as well, but I deferred to science. I always wanted this commonality, this common thread, this thing that even though there was like 99% of the shit in all these different religions was probably wrong or arbitrary, that there's this one thread that just tied them all together, where if you took it all away, if you just had that thread nailed, like you knew, like you got it, you understood what tied everyone together. And I've been looking for it. Like I've been searching for it. It's almost like, so like, not, I would never condescend to call myself even comparable to the intelligence of like an Einstein or something. Okay, this isn't an analogy. See, I'm so fucking dumb. I don't even know what the, like, simile, analogy, metaphor, whatever. Einstein, before he died, was looking for a unifying theory, like this thing that was common, that could, like, the science that we have today is all statistics. It's all statistical likelihoods. It's not absolute, right? So, like, that's another reason why when everyone talks in absolutes, I'm like, well, you know, based off of the way you're analyzing things right now, you can't say it's absolute. It's all just statistical likelihoods, right? But so Einstein was looking to take these statistical likelihoods and find this unifying principle, this unifying law that would tie everything together, so that regardless of what question you asked, it would be able to give you an answer if you knew how to work the numbers and do the calculation, right? He died trying to find that. Right now, we've gone through another generation of people that are looking through that for that, right? Whatever you call it, like superstring theory and all these other kinds of theories that physicists are trying to come up with, that is what that is. It is a search for this kind of unifying underlying piece, right? Like that kind of binds everything together. I've been looking for something like this in science and not religion. I swore off religion, spirituality, so much so that my wife would say that she is spiritual, and I would say absolutely not, doesn't exist. There's no spirituality or anything like that. There's just some common scientific formula that puts us all together, okay? And actually, Bryce brings up a very good point. And many times in history, science was demonized, as was religion. That wasn't the proposed norm of dominating societies. That's correct. Which again points to this arbitrary nature of, like, you know, science is right, religion is right? Like, stop, okay? We need to get down to the marrow, right? We need to get down to the marrow of it. And so I've been looking for this common thread, and within the last 3 days, I've been listening to this man, Mark Passio, who has done a number of talks at Anarchy every single year. And this past year, he did one that put him on the radar for me. And the talk was the pandemic that is infecting anarchism, right? And he speaks about the reason why, you know, first of all, anarchism has a problem of being mainstreamed. And second of all, why anarchism is not succeeding in kind of winning over people. Right? Obviously, you're fighting against, you know, years of programming and kind of like this counter, fight against anarchism to paint it as this awful thing. You're fighting that societal propensity. But even still, if there was a truth to it, if there was a common, like, you know, really compelling thing to it, it should be able to resonate with tons of people. What he points to is the fact that people don't truly understand the nature of rights. They don't understand the nature of, if you're here, what do you get? Right? Like, what is right and wrong? You know, what is it to live a good life, or to do something that is good versus something that is bad? And the one thing that he says is that relative morality, or moral relativity, meaning that morals are fluid, right? Like they're dependent on the circumstance. He said that is the root of evil in our existence. And that as that grows, liberty and freedom dies. And as things become more objective in terms of morality, that freedom and liberty becomes possible. True freedom and liberty, which is anarchy. All right? And so he draws this, or he brings in this concept of the fact that, the idea that morals can change based off of the circumstances is dangerous. It is evil. And just think about that. It's completely like, it makes so much sense. And the reason why it does is because if it's relative, you can justify literally anything if you find a way to bullshit enough, right? Like, if you find a nuanced enough circumstance, you can justify the most vile things. So right now you have Israel and Palestine trading rockets and casualties, okay? Well, a big part of that conversation is, well, Israel had to go through, its people being tried to be genocided, right? Less than 100 years ago. And so you can, like, the Nazis Hitler came up with morally relativistic reasoning to kill millions of people, because he was able to connect the dots relativistically and say, these people are endangering our country and our culture, so we have to get rid of them, right? That's moral relativism. If you are a free sovereign person, you can see through that bullshit in an instant, because it's not relative. If the answer is we have a problem, we have to kill millions of people, you're fucking wrong. It's bad. But in a moral relativist culture or society, it becomes possible. It's allowed. And so this thought process that, morals are objective and stuff. And here's the other thing. The moment I start in on this conversation, especially if I'm talking to someone online, they think I'm some kind of mainliner, like, born again Christian again in my life, or Judeo-Christian absolutist. I am not. And in fact, if you listen to Mark talk, he is actually against all organized religion, because he believes it is a control mechanism that has been used by people for thousands of years to obscure you from what is the true nature of life, the true rights and spirituality of existence on this planet. And what it obscures your vision from is the idea that there is natural rights and natural law. All the rest is smoke-filled coffeehouse bullshit. How many times you pray, the direction you face in, all this stuff. Whether you can eat pork or not, it's all bullshit. What is true is liberty. It is freedom. That is the core. That is the spirituality that binds all of us together. And the more that we rely on this relativist morality, this idea that, it's bad, but, under these circumstances, it's okay. Now, there's so much more to this. Like, I am just on the cusp of beginning to explore this, because something that he also talks about, and something that I have found in myself, is that as much as people want to believe that they understand natural rights, they don't. Most people don't understand natural rights and natural law. They don't get it. They think they do. But the problem is that they're thinking of natural rights and natural law in the context of where they've come from. And where they come from is typically a culture or a religion or some kind of other background that forms their thinking about what natural rights and natural law is. Natural rights and natural law are very simple. Cause, effect. That's what natural rights and natural law is. All the other machinations of what you can do and what you can't do are wrong. They are arbitrarily drawn lines on a map. Morality has to do with a subset of basically principles or rights that you have as a sentient human being that exists on this planet. Now, why is it that I feel comfortable with the statement, a very binary statement, that there is anarchy or there is slavery? It's because if you have your natural rights, you are an anarchist. You are a pure, free individual, a sovereign, free individual. You have liberty. The moment any of those are minorly infringed upon, you are no longer free. You are a slave. You are a slave at least to a small, minute extent, or like I said, in the very worst case, think of the most awful visions of slavery that you have in your head or you've seen throughout time. There is a range of that. But at the core of it, you are either free or you are a slave. You either have your natural rights or they have been taken from you in a small bit or a large amount. And that is regardless of what your job role is. It is regardless of what your religion is. It is regardless of what your station in life or the amount of money is that you have. That's why it is ridiculous when people talk about trans rights and gay rights and black rights and female rights. They're all natural rights. And what people think are rights is typically not correct. It's typically privileges that they're talking about or preferences that they want to act like is a natural right. It's my natural right to free education. It's my natural right to, whatever, fill in the blank. That's not a natural right. That's a want. That's you justifying what you want. There's no such thing as all these different rights. There is natural rights. That's it. That's it. That's all that exists. Cause, effect. Natural law, right? It is very basic. But Mark goes through, and I am like, I wish I had 9 million hours in a day, because how much I have listened to him, there is like literally volumes. I mean, when he gives a talk, it is not 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. He gives hours worth of talk, and he is spot the frick on. And the reason why I can say that, at least for myself, is because when he talks, these things I have been looking for my through that arc of my spirituality and my religion, through the arc of politics that goes with it, is what he is talking about. It hits me right in my core. I understand it. Like, almost as the words are coming out of his mouth, I'm like, holy shit, I've been thinking this my entire life. I couldn't put the words to it. I couldn't understand it. Here's something else. This doesn't have to do just with religion. Or at least organized religion in the extent that people think of it. It has to do with the other religions that fly under the radar that we don't understand are religions. Politics is a religion. Let me say that again. Politics is a religion. If it's not the Israelis and the Palestinians killing each other and fighting with each other, it's fucking Republicans and Democrats. It's belief systems that have been built up over and above, and in fact, in defiance of natural law. Frankie was the one who put this thing in my ear like a couple of days ago or a couple of weeks ago. It is like the most experiential altering thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Thank you. And Frankie said, now you understand why I've been on an existential spiral for the last couple of weeks. And now Frankie understands why I got into it with Mike Rufo about whether politics even matters anymore. Politics is fucking religion, bruh. It's a belief system. That's all it is. It's arbitrary. It could be anything. We've seen that throughout time. There are political regimes that have killed millions of people. There are political regimes that have taken everyone's stuff. It's a religion. If you can find a way to justify it, your relativist morality. Rufo's saying politics is part of culture now. I'm Mike. I'm telling you, bro. Like, I know you're busy. like, listen to this dude. He is, and he is unapologetic. Like, if you're looking for this message to be shared in like this nice, cute way, it ain't gonna happen. Like, so if that's what you're expecting, you're gonna get punched in the face. And you know what? If you are one of these people who are devoutly religious, I'm telling you, like, I'm just at that place right now in my journey where I was softened up enough where I could hear this. If I had heard this 6 months ago, 12 months ago, I don't know if I would have been as receptive, right? Like the filter would have been so clogged, or it would have been, I would have had walls up to the point where I wouldn't have listened to it. Or if I did listen to it, I wouldn't have heard it. But these things that people point to as these parts of society that essentially infringe on natural law, they are religions themselves. We have seen a science religion come up within the last 12 to 15 months. I believe Mark calls them scientists, something like that. He also calls them religionists. If you believe that your religion is right and everyone else is fucked. There is a common thread here. It is something that I've been searching for so long. There's other aspects of this that just go right to the heart of the direction I want my life to head in from this point on. Right? Like, if I had this information, I chose not to act. This is the other thing. He talks about, I think Mike is on board with this. Politics in today's form is definitely 100% a religion. He's in agreement. That's good. We have some common ground. But so he talks about, the talk I'm listening to right now is what constitutes like a true Christian, or at least you don't necessarily have to be a quote unquote Christian, but you have to be someone who is, spiritually good, right? Like, what constitutes someone who is spiritually good? Well, part of it is action. Part of it is embodying what you actually purport to believe. The vast majority of people say they believe things, they're full of shit. Because they don't do it. Libertarians run in that all the time. You know why you're not a real libertarian? If you don't do libertarian shit. Then you're not a real libertarian. If all you do is sit behind the computer and just do this all day long, then you're not a real libertarian. You have to live it, right? You have to embody it. The same thing with good spirituality, right? What it is to be spiritually good on this planet. It means you have to live it. And so there are certain foundational things that I've been piecing together throughout the last 12 to 15 months. Natural rights and natural law, at the base of it, the foundational piece, is like the most important thing I've come across. Because everything else is derivative from that, or at least everything else that you can analyze, whether or not it's good or bad, or whether or not it should be something that you pursue or don't pursue, it all relates back to that. It all relates back to natural rights. But on top of that is this idea of culture and community. You need a culture and community of people that are of that mindset, that understand the concept of natural rights. They understand the concept of what it is to be free and have liberty. Right? The freedom to believe as you want is fine. But the moment that it conflicts with someone else's natural rights, you're in the wrong. And so you need a community that wholeheartedly embraces and lives that. That is the most important part. They live it. So that's the second piece. Built on top of that are three other things. And again, these are derivative from the first two. The other three things that I have that are kind of like these next level building blocks are voluntarism, individualism, and decentralization. If you have a foundation of natural rights and natural law, if you build a community of people that understand and live that, then the way that you embody it and that you actually execute on those things is voluntarism. Everything is voluntary. Nothing is compulsory. Nothing is compulsory. Individualism. You never make decisions based off of the good of the whole. Or at least, you never make decisions based off the good of the whole to the detriment of an individual's natural rights. Let me restate that. You can make a decision that's based off of the good of the group as long as there is voluntarism and you're not violating someone's natural rights. And the last piece of it is decentralization. The moment you centralize authority and decision-making is the moment that all this stuff goes to hell. Because you give up all of your power as a sovereign individual, as a free person, sentient being on this planet. This is the foundation of something that I want the rest of my life to look like. And it is now my job to continue to learn, but also to embody and act and actually live this way. So let me return to what kind of kicked off this conversation. And it's this idea that, my father wants me to see police officers as human, right? He wants me to see police officers that lose their lives as, at least some of them, if not all of them, did it admirably, and it could have been him. And I'll tell him, and I'll say this. I'm not going to trample on any of their graves. Loss of life is loss of life. It is loss. It is loss. I mean, and part of Mark's talks, and I still have yet to delve into this as well, is this idea of true forgiveness. Like true forgiveness. Not just fucking talk, right? Can you forgive someone who killed someone you love? Like retribution or not retribution, but the concept of trying to make up for that loss is one thing, but forgiveness is also true forgiveness is a major part of that, right? So in that vein, I'm not going to trample on anyone's grave. I'm not going to dance and celebrate if I think that someone was violating someone else's constitutional rights and they died as a result of it. And likewise, I'm not going to discount that, the officers do good things. There are videos of officers doing good things. And if you're one of those people who says, you know what, the officer did a good thing right here, but I'm not going to give them credit for it because they were an asshole over here. That is you're taking something that they did in their past and you're not and I don't want to use the phrase giving them credit for, but you're not analyzing the actual thing that was happening in the moment, right? If they died doing an altruistic thing, you can say that they died doing an altruistic thing. You don't have to say, oh, well, yeah, but they took someone's firearms 2 weeks ago, so good riddance. But all of this comes back to this idea of natural rights. So my father wants to humanize these officers that have lost their lives, and in doing so, also draw a parallel to him. And I will tell him this: look, I get it. I understand. They are human beings. I will not sit there and celebrate their loss. Okay, but at the same time, there is a standard that needs to be, at the very least, reestablished. And it is that all of those men that lost their lives, they were free sovereign people as well if they chose to be. And part of sovereignty, part of freedom, is identifying right from wrong and choosing to act or not act accordingly. So if they have violated people's constitutional rights, then that's on them as individuals. Anyone who is a Nazi or anyone who worked for Mao or Anyone who is basically, taken someone's life at the orders of another, that person was a slave, and they allowed themselves to be a slave. They allowed themselves to hide behind the justification that they were just, taking orders, that they were just following orders. And in some instances, yeah, that is a parallel. But there's also something to understand here. The person who's following orders, who says they're following orders, they have the right to stop it. But there's also a group of people that are just evil to their core. And they don't do these things. They get others to do them for them. They get police officers to do things, and they hold it over their head that they will not be able to feed their families, or they will be blacklisted or ostracized. There is a group of people that make others or compel others to do their bidding for them. Many of them are politicians. Many of them are the higher-ups in corporations. Many of them are influence peddlers. They don't do these things themselves because they don't want the blood on their hands. They don't want the hit to, if you believe in it, karma, their karma. They don't want to have to deal with the ramifications of them actually doing it. Right? Like ANCAPs and anarchists and libertarians, all the time when people say, like someone on the left says, oh, well, you should have to give up your guns. We're always like, well, are you going to come take them? Well, guess what? You know who else isn't going to come take them physically? Phil Murphy ain't going to show up to your house. Right? Like Joe Biden or Kamala Harris ain't going to show up to your house. Who is? An officer of the law. A functionary. Someone that they have strong-armed into thinking that they're just doing their job, when really that individual has to deal with all of the karmic fallout, all of the spiritual fallout of what they're doing. They will have to answer for that. So there is some nuance here. And there's also some vile fucking people that don't just allow this to happen, they actively make it happen. To think that they are stupid and ignorant is stupid and ignorant. To think that they don't understand what they're doing by displacing themselves. I mean, it's very accurate to call the federal government the mafia, the mob, right? The bosses in the mob, they hardly ever carry out the dirty work. It's always the underlings, right? It's always the people that they feel are expendable. The lowest guy on the totem pole. That's the one who's the bag man. That's the one who, whacks the opponent or the, whoever is vying for control of the territory or threatening their superiority within the family or the structure. It's not the senior member. It's not the aristocrat who goes down and beats up the sharecropper for the money. They send the constable. They send their functionary to go do it. Why? Because they can rationalize when they go to bed at night and when they're on their deathbed that they didn't do it themselves. And that if it was wrong, the person who went and did it would have stopped it. Right? If it was so bad, all these people would have revolted. They wouldn't have followed my commands. There's some interplay here. And so if you're one of these people who wants to look at something like, a memorial for police officers and basically say, oh, well, they're all like, thugs and villains. I get it. I understand. Like, it's a rallying cry, right? Like, it's something that travels. The same thing on the other side. The other thing that travels on the other side of that argument or that discussion is, they put their lives at risk every single day. But we have to look at the true nature of just existence to understand this. And this society will fall apart It will crumble and fail if we don't learn this. If we think that morals are relative, if we think that there is like this spectrum of things between anarchy and slavery, we will crumble and die. We will go the way of Rome and the other civilizations. In fact, I think Mark probably makes the argument that Rome and the other civilizations didn't necessarily die, they just morphed into something different. I'm going through right now a talk where he's talking about the Vatican and some of the things that they are involved in, and whoo, it gets deep. It also gets really dark. But again, if we don't learn this lesson, we will have, calamity isn't even a word that begins to describe it. It won't even be a calamity, because at this point, look at what has happened over the last 12 to 15 months. It is not just the United States. It is literally every single life on the face of this planet is affected by this misunderstanding. It is literally a problem of people not being able to understand the difference between right and wrong. You do not hurt people. You do not take their things. You do not force them to do anything that they don't want to do themselves voluntarily. It is very simple. And when aggressed upon, an individual who is sentient has the ability to defend themselves with as much force as they deem necessary to protect their life. These are very simple concepts. In practice, we get caught up in all of the other diversions that take away from that very simple aspect of what ails us. It doesn't matter, the individual law that happened over here. It doesn't. It doesn't matter what this politician said. It doesn't matter what whether they said something this week and then they changed their mind the next week. All of that doesn't matter. It's all a diversion. This is gonna be funny, but it is a diversion from the perversion, if you will. And mind you, this is coming from someone who would not have considered themselves spiritual 3 months ago. I would have considered myself an atheist. And you know what? Mark even addresses that as well. And again, I don't just see it, I freaking feel it. Atheism is a religion as well. Most atheists are these, religion of science people. I was one. And the religion of science is also relativist in terms of morality. Why is it that you had people like Mengele think that they could perform experiments on people, awful experiments? Because they said, oh, well, yes, it's evil in the here and now, right? But it has a greater good, right? Like if I do something awful to this individual and operate on them or whatever, I'll learn something, and that'll save lives down the line. It's morally relative, right? That allows you to justify this awful crap that happened. But you know what the truth of it is? It's not relative. It's just fucking wrong. It's evil. It's bad. We really need to learn this lesson. So I'm going to continue. I'm definitely going to continue listening to Mark because, like I said, there is legitimately like hundreds and hundreds of hours of him giving these talks and breaking down these concepts. There is literally just a ridiculous number of situations that you could look at through a different lens as a result of what he's talking about. And so that is going to be part of my journey over the near future. It is going to be to truly understand what it means to have natural rights and what it is to honor those natural rights, regardless of the circumstances. That's also something that is so, so important. Doesn't matter the circumstances. The moment I post about this stuff online, it's all the what ifs. Well, what if you're poor and your family's about to starve and you steal one loaf of bread? Isn't that good? Well, what happens if you steal that loaf of bread from a family that only has one loaf of bread? Is it still good? Stealing is bad, right? Now, does that mean that you're not allowed to make that decision? You can make that decision, but you have to deal with the ramifications of it. If you steal a loaf of bread and your family doesn't starve, but you go to jail or a work camp or something to try and make up for, what you stole, well, that's the natural consequence. That is the natural law. You can still do it. It doesn't make it right. You could still do it. You can still do something that's wrong as long as you pay the recompense for it. Cause, effect, right? My wife and I had this conversation earlier today. This is like another analogy is, if anyone has heard about this phrase, it is the idea of natural consequences when it comes to parenting. Not arbitrary ones. Not, you defy me, I spank you. Like, that's arbitrary. That's an arbitrary consequence because, you're teaching your child to equate defying people with being beaten. All right? The philosophy of natural consequences is, if you defy me, what did you defy me in? Right? Did you defy me in, eating too much? Did you defy me in stealing something? All of those defiances, you need to come up with a natural consequence for those. It can't be a one-size-fits-all, right? So what's the natural consequence if you're an adult of stealing things? Well, in our society, everyone goes to prison, right? It's like the Venezuelan episode of Parks and Rec. Straight to jail, right? Go right to prison. That's not a natural consequence. That's freaking sequestering everyone. Giving everyone the same exact punishment. Does that make sense? Based off of and I'll use air quotes, the crime that you committed. Is that a natural consequence? Everyone goes to prison, regardless of what the wrong was that you did? That makes no sense at all. There needs to be a natural consequence for the infraction. And again, the only things that require natural consequences in terms of negative natural consequences should be the things that violate natural law. Not arbitrary shit. Put whatever you want on it. Drug use, driving without a license, all of these things go under this arbitrary machination of control that has absolutely nothing to do with preserving natural rights. Absolutely nothing to do with preserving natural rights. And absolutely nothing to do with taking infractions against natural rights and giving a natural consequence as the, whatever word you want to use, punishment or direct effect or the downstream effect of what you've done. It's all arbitrary because people don't get the concept of natural rights. So anyway, I'm going to continue on that journey, but it is my dedication now to continue to focus on and begin to put the building blocks in place to live these things. Natural rights, build culture and community, decentralization, voluntarism, and individualism. With the goal of being free. That should be everyone's goal, to live free. So that is now my goal. If you would like to come along with me, please do. I would like to. I had this conversation with someone the other day on the phone. They were like, do you do prep before your episodes and stuff? Obviously, I read and I take notes or I find articles and things like that. But for the most part, when I'm interviewing people, it's organic, right? It just kind of goes. And I said the dirty little secret of my program is the audience, if you want to come along with me, great. But most of the time, I'm not asking the question because I already know the answer. I'm asking the question of myself in order to do the research, or I'm asking the question of the other people that I'm talking with or interviewing so that I can learn. And if you come along with me on that journey, fantastic. I want you to come along with me. So if you're not already, if you're watching this and you're not already, please subscribe, follow, come with me. This is going to be I'm telling you, for me, this is life altering. This is perspective altering. This will alter the rest of my future existence on this planet. So come with me. Definitely follow, definitely subscribe, and definitely share it. Thank you very much. And Mike saying, this is Matt's daily journal entry. Yeah, kind of. Join me as I make more journal entries in the future. Look, I appreciate it. Tomorrow night, I will be back. We are going to be talking about the gray man. We're going to be talking about this idea of almost kind of like hiding in plain sight. Being ungovernable, but also being someone that can't be picked out of a crowd, right? You're just in the crowd, but you know the cool thing is that you are ungovernable, but you are also not able to essentially be singled out from the crowd of, you know, quote unquote normies that are around you. It's gonna be a fantastic episode. So I will see you tomorrow night at 7. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.